Ladies and gentlemen, hello. Welcome to this webinar for today. Good morning or good evening, depending on where in the globe you're joining in from. My name is Ramla Qureshi, and I am the CEO/founder of Women Engineers Pakistan. This webinar is a prelude to the upcoming job fair, STEM Forward 2020, which is a one-of-its-kind virtual job fair that we are arranging in Pakistan to help the workforce realize how we can manage through the ongoing pandemic. As a rule, I would suggest everyone to please mute themselves. That helps us carry forward this conversation smoothly. Should you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat window. We will be taking notes and we will be having a detailed question answer session at the end of this webinar. Let me give you a brief overview of what we're talking about. This webinar is titled More and Better Jobs for Women in STEM in Pakistan. Women in STEM and the energy sector in Pakistan. We understand that getting more women into STEM occupations will translate into a greater gender equality in both in income and economic prospects for women and their families across Pakistan. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, the gender gap is rather large when it comes to the STEM fields, and the energy sector is one of the least diverse places that we see in Pakistan. Today's session will feature both industry experts and experts within the policy-making sectors, as well as the development sector, who will discuss how Pakistan can better recruit, retain, and develop the female workforce in the STEM and energy sector. With this, I would like to welcome our very esteemed panelists. First up, we have Fawzia Hassan, who is a senior energy specialist with the World Bank. Fawzia has been in service with the World Bank for more than 23 years, where she's worked in the South Asia, East Asia, Pacific Islands, Middle East, North Africa, and Latin America regions. Fawzia, we're really glad to have you on board with us. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and we really hope to learn so much from you. Next up, we have Uzma Quresh. Uzma is a senior social development specialist with the World Bank. She has over 14 years of experience working on gender equality, women's empowerment with both international and national organizations. She's covered a diverse range of issues, including women's economic empowerment, financial inclusion, enterprise development, disaster risk reduction, management, gender responsive budgeting and planning. She is a key person to have on this panel today, and we really hope to learn a lot from you today as well, Uzma. We also have with us Mr. Adil on. Adil is a project management expert with over 8 years of private and public sector construction industry experience. He's currently working at the Infrastructure Development Authority of Punjab as manager projects, and he's also running his own consultancy business simultaneously. Adil, thank you so much for giving us your time. You are one of the key industry professionals that you've helped us quite a lot with the STEM Forward Job Fair as well, and I am pretty certain that we will get a very succinct industry perspective from your experience. I would also like to welcome Namira Hamid. She's the founder of Women in Energy Pakistan, which is a professional network of women in energy, climate, and a broader power sector. Namira is our partner and one of the organizing members of STEM Forward 2020, and we will be talking in detail about what does it mean for women in the energy sector and how can we get more and better jobs for them. And last but not the least, we have the pleasure of having Faiza Yusuf, who is the founder of Women in Tech PK and is also the founder of Code Girls, which is a blockchain training program for women programmers and analysts, and consulting for a couple of local and international clients on requirement engineering, team management, and agile transformation. Everyone, thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedules and helping us understand how we can get more and better jobs for women in STEM and energy sectors in Pakistan. My first question, Fawzia, would be directed towards you. Let me give a quick background. So throughout the globe, men outnumber women in STEM fields. That is a fact. So for example, in the US, we know that just over 16% of women are of all chemical engineers are women. And that ratio increases a little bit as we move towards, let's say, environmental engineering, environmental scientists as well. Unfortunately, in Pakistan, this ratio is uh, very drastically low. I mean, we have less than 10% of women in the STEM fields. And when we look in the energy sector, women technologists are less than 4.6%. You have over 23 years of very extensive experience working in sustainable gender inclusive policies and in employment opportunities all over the globe. Have you noticed a common denominator that has led to such reduced participation of women in STEM fields?
Ramla, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for inviting me. I'd like to thank the organizers as well. I know Women Engineers, We Power, and Women in Energy in Pakistan are putting this seminar together. And I hope to see many more come along so that, we may create more awareness for our Pakistani females in the STEM fields. Before I tell you about the common denominator that I see, you threw out some numbers. Let me throw out a few more numbers for you to understand where Pakistan stands globally. The global share of women in computer and mathematical fields is 23% globally. Out of that, only 11% are in architecture and engineering jobs. Women in research and development in Central Asia, 48%, LAC is like 45, the Arab states 41, ECA is 39, and Japan is only 16.6%. So you look at these numbers and then you compare India. India has like 50% of the undergraduate females who have degrees in information technology. But there's only 31% actually in the engineering jobs. Again, you already talked about the US percentage, 25% in STEM. Japan has only 15% in engineering itself. And to date, no OECD country has achieved gender parity for engineering. The only bright spot we have worldwide is that Europe is closing the gap. And at the moment, we have 32.4%. 40% compared to 32 in 2009. So you can see the gradual, more female participation, but we're still not there. There is no parity anywhere in globally. So let's talk about what are the common denominators. It's other than social norms that we already have and cultural barriers we have, it's creating the opportunity for women in our field, and that is creating that opportunity from a very early stage on in education. There's a gender bias, basically. And it's a global phenomenon. It's not only Pakistan. We have preconceived ideas of what careers our daughters should go into. Unfortunately, STEM field is not one of those fields, and they have reasons behind it. I mean, there are reasons where mothers don't want their daughters doing this. So that's what I'm trying to say. The bias is not only men. There is a bias starting from home, where a mother will actually not encourage her daughter to go into an engineering field because they have to go out into the fields, into the rural areas probably, right? They have to go into utilities and, they have to go out into the various areas where it's populated by men and dominated by men. So their mothers are not going to, encourage them. Not all of them, but, And then you have, of course, the men in the family who also will not encourage their sisters or, their daughters and their wives to do that as well. So eventually, then there's a place where we do see women do come into the STEM and engineering, but we cannot sustain them. There is what we call the leaky pipeline, right? And there's a reason for that as well. The reason is, one, We haven't started them from the beginning in education of understanding. Two, there is no career path line for them. So eventually, if they do come into it, they don't see a future career. We have no support for them. These are women who have families, who will get married, who will have kids, that support as well. So, so encouragement starts from home, but then there is an onus upon the government as well to provide these women, you know, assurances, to provide these women opportunities through regulations and policies put in place. And this is, you know, these are just the very obvious denominators that globally we see. From the We Power baseline assessment, Pakistan has the second highest enrollment in engineering students. However, it didn't transition into the energy workforce whatsoever, and only, as you said, about the 3.6% of technical positions are, you know, are in women, and only women have 4.9%. There are 4.9% women in the engineering supervisory roles. So there is a career path that we have to, once we do get them into this role, we do need to support them to keep their jobs, to move along in their jobs, and then basically support them when it comes to maybe childcare, you know, providing them security, and giving them management roles. You know, there should be a career path for them. I think I've noticed the countries, and there are some countries in Eastern Europe where they have started paying attention to these kind of things, and we have seen a lot of progress, and the percentage is increase of women coming into the engineering and STEM field. I'll end over here. So
thank you, Fawzia. Thank you so much. Adil, my next question is from you. So we know that STEM professions are some of the fastest growing, some of the highest paying jobs. Yet, as Fawzia mentioned, in Pakistan, we don't see an equal distribution of this, you know, potential opportunity for economic balance and economic prosperity. As an industry professional, exclusively working in, you know, some of the more intense engineering, so like you've worked a lot in the construction industry sector as well. What are some of the challenges you believe that the Pakistani industry faces in facilitating women in these technical roles? Adil, you're mute. Let me unmute you. There you go. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Ramla, for the invitation, introduction, and the acknowledgement. And it's a pleasure being here. We all know that most of the highest paid jobs in Pakistan are STEM jobs, which means more women in STEM will lead to definitely economic prosperity of women-led families. So there is no doubt that they must be in good numbers, or at least comparable to the other world. Well, I see two distributions in this. One is general presence of women in STEM fields. As you mentioned, that only 10% account for education in such fields, and the other is their presence in STEM within the STEM fields. So, where they are visible in computer related fields only, which does not mean that women are in all STEM fields. For example, I would like to quote here that the day before yesterday, I was at a corporate dinner being hosted by a pro-rector NAST in Lahore, where we had the top industry leaders from Lahore, but unfortunately, none of them was a female. Furthermore, the guests were presented with the stats by the advancement office, where they told that the male-female ratio of students in NAST, one of the top ranked universities of Pakistan, is 7 to 3, which I believe has all the facilities to support women in STEM and located at the federal capital. So this is about the status quo, but the point is, uh, what are the challenges impeding this? There are certain, invisible as well as visible barriers. In for say in Pakistan, which are not enabling women to excel in STEM. I'm from a hardcore construction industry. I'm from engineering sector where we had only 10 female students out of 150 total. So means girls were least interested in this field. Now, the same thing I see in my industry. All the top management are 99% males who are not comfortable in hiring females in engineering sector, saying that it's really hard to get the work done from them. Okay, why is it hard? Answer is obviously they have spent on time on the same benches where we had been, as I mentioned, 10 to 150 ratio back in 2008. So how would they be comfortable in late 90s when we were not in 2008? So we literally had almost negligible interaction with the female students. Now, not only the management perspective, but we have facilities available. But I mean, do we have facilities available in our sector to facilitate women? In my sector, no daycare centers, no street lights, no washrooms at workplace sites, at work sites, and above all, is our workforce, I mean, labor, is that ready to work under the supervision of a female? I think no. So it needs to be, it needs, and it warrants the justification of development of an ecosystem which is friendly for the women to thrive in the engineering sector, and acceptance is required from the both ends, I believe. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Adil. Some very, very valid points raised about what the ecosystem in STEM fields, specifically in areas where you have to be on the field. There are some requirements that need to be now tackled within the Pakistani ecosystem. Uzma, let's get a little bit of your perspective here. So in STEM fields across the country, we know that there is discrimination. Adil mentioned some points about how there is not the availability of female toilets and restrooms, etc. But there's also harassment, like workplace harassment, sexual harassments. We see them as more frequent, and gender is perceived as an impediment rather than advantage in career success. As an expert, what do you suggest that what are some of the policies and practices that we need to bring about in order to increase opportunities in STEM for women in Pakistan that can ensure more retention and more participation of women in STEM fields?
Thanks, Ramla. You are absolutely right. Gender discrimination, it persists in most workplaces in Pakistan, including STEM fields, that disadvantages women considerably. And like Fazia also mentioned, this is reflected in our very low female labor force participation rate overall. And you also talked about, and Adil also talked about harassment. So we have a very comprehensive law, protection against harassment of women at workplace. So laws like these, they have to be adequately implemented across public and private sector to ensure that an enabling environment is available for women, not just in STEM fields overall, but especially in STEM field also. So Pakistan, as you know, also has a quota for women nationally in the public sector, around 10%. And then different provinces, they have different percentages. For instance, KP Department policy, it aspires to 20% women's representation in the public sector. Punjab has 25%. But like Fazia and Ramla, you earlier talked about very less representation of women in the energy sector and in STEM fields. It's also true for the entire public sector and also the private sector in Pakistan. Fozia has shared some very alarming figures about women and girls in STEM field. And this is also exacerbated by the fact that, like you said, very few women are also represented in senior management positions in Pakistan. So policies such as, having dedicated facilities for childcare, maternity and paternity benefits for women and men both, and things as basic as, like on Adil Saab said, separate washrooms for women and men. They are critical for having more women working in STEM fields. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but these things have to be on front when we are negotiating and when we are discussing policy options with client, with government counterparts, with other stakeholders. And you also know that about 70 to 80% of our graduates from medical schools, they are also women, but less than 50% they end up joining the workforce. And in addition to the constraints that we just talked about, uh, career growth and mentoring opportunities, they will also help young women who want to pursue jobs in male-dominated fields such as STEM. And we all know Pakistan also has the highest gender wage gap in the world, which is relatively smaller in STEM fields, but still we need policies to ensure such gaps don't exist. And in fact, World Bank is currently supporting provincial and federal governments in collaboration with UN to amend labor laws that will also ensure no discrimination on the basis of gender happens. And one of the clauses is in fact about equal pay for work of equal value. Secondly, we also need, Ramla, to your point, rigorous community and media interventions to transform social norms around these practices. For example, showing women in STEM fields as champions, as role models on mainstream media, in TV shows. This can be some of the strategies on changing behaviors and attitudes about girls studying STEM and working in these fields later on. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Uzma. You raised some very, very valid points. Before I move on to the next speaker, I would like to tell everyone at large that we have a chat window open where you can type in your comments and questions that we will later relay on to our very esteemed panelists. Faiza, coming over to you, we know that engineering and in specific terms, computer science and computer engineering, these are the most lucrative STEM fields, not just in Pakistan, but across the globe. And they are also places where women can excel because some of them do not involve you being present on a field, for example, an engineering field or a plant or something like that. However, these fields still remain heavily male-dominated. What are some of the ways that we can stop steering girls away from math and science and make these fields much more welcoming for women? Please also, I really want you to discuss some of the initiatives that Women in Tech PK has taken to reduce the fear of engineering and technology, which, like Adil said previously, that girls themselves have this embedded fear and lack of interest. So what are some of the initiatives that you and your organization are taking to tackle this fear within girls?
Right. Thank you so much, Ramla. So this problem with women not taking interest in tech is multifold. So, for example, I graduated from a public university, Kennedy University in Karachi. So I graduated in 2009, and at that time we had 50 girls and 50 boys in the class that I graduated from. And since then, Kennedy has that kind of ratio in computer science batches. The reason being that it's a merit-based university, and girls usually score better in intermediate exams. So they get into that. But after quite a lot of years, around 11 years, now I see that I think maybe not even 5 of us are part of the tech sector, and they left. But when it comes to private universities, so I've taught at FAST, Karachi, and a lot of other private universities, you will say the number of women in the classroom is less than 10%, because these universities are expensive, and a lot of parents wouldn't want to invest in a girl's education in a way that they would do to a boy. So you will see less number of women in the classroom, and universities like FAST or NAST or other universities, even like ICRA University, the classroom will still be heavily male dominated. What I identified, or the reason that I started Women in Tech PK, was to basically facilitate my students at these universities, because I knew, because a lot of them came to me and said that you are the only faculty, female faculty, that is part of the industry. And other than you, we only know Jihara. Are there any other women in tech? So of course, there are a lot of women in tech, and I created the community because I wanted to connect these girls with senior women in tech so that they can see role models and they get to know about the work these women have been doing. Another problem is that there are a lot of women in STEM, but there is no visibility. That is also a really big problem. So I know a lot of women who have been working in tech for 12, 15, even 20 years, but you won't find them on LinkedIn, you won't find them on Facebook, you won't find them on Twitter. So in today's day and age, when someone does not have a digital footprint, the person does not exist for any of us, right? And the way that we collected women to be part of the community was via LinkedIn. So we reached out to women, sent them the link to the community, asked them to join in, and that's how it went. um, so we started connecting these girls with senior women in tech, and we also started building a digital footprint for these women by publishing their interviews, by asking them to come speak on the Facebook page, do webinars and stuff like that. So when people or possible employers Google them, they land on a publication that has given them a space, that has published their interview, that has given them a space to guest contribute there. Other than that, we also saw that a lot of these girls only need a nudge in the right direction. So you on the community, you will see a lot of them will be making anonymous posts about problems that they have seen at the workplace, but they don't know who to turn to, because a lot of these companies do not have a lot of women workforce. So for example, in my early career, the first 5 jobs I had, I was the only woman in the office. And even in tech, no separate washroom, because I was the only woman there, and they did not care about that. But you see, in bigger companies, larger organizations, things are changing, and smaller companies are now also taking a lead, because they know that things will go in public, because communities have kind of built a fear in them, in the sense that if they will mistreat someone, that thing will come on a social media platform, that thing will go on Glassdoor, that thing will go on some other place. So they are very vigilant about that as well. We also created like a directory called Pro Women, with Code Girls and Pasha, to make sure that women profiles are highlighted. And if you are looking for a female speaker in a certain sector, you can just go there and find someone, rather than setting up a panel and then saying that we were unable to find any women. So these are the few things that we have done, and a very, very long way to go. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Faiza. You yourself are a big role model for me and the rest of my community as well. You spoke a little bit about how you're tackling the fear. I want you to just chime in and say that when we go to different schools across the country, we don't start teaching girls robotics or coding right there, because some of these girls aren't even allowed access to laptops. They haven't even touched one. And if I'm going to start teaching them coding and mathematics right there, they're only going to get more intimidated. So what we do is we start something called game-based learning. We create play-based modules, which we divide a classroom and we create a competition, just a paper plane. Anyone of any age, to this day, I love making and flying paper planes. So you can really teach science and math and code with usual household concepts, and that immediately you see that girls, when they're not afraid of a concept, they're actually very, very good at it. Namira, I wanted to talk to you about, so this is a difficult topic now, because we know that energy sector needs a lot of work right now. And it's also one of the very critical sectors in Pakistan, because as we move forward, we are tackling issues like climate-induced problems and extreme weather events. How and lack of women in these fields leads to one-dimensional decisions that do not accommodate more women in the workforce and in the decision-making table as well. How has your organization, Women in Energy Pakistan, encouraged energy-relevant companies and organizations in the country to promote mentorship, sponsorship, networking, and also how have they ever incorporated any male ally programs?
Thank you so much. Even so, most of us know each other on this panel, and we've spoken so many times, but hearing these stories is amazing. Faiza's story always, it's so inspiring to hear from where we started and where we are. So our story for Women in Energy Pakistan is also a story where it started with a male ally and a male champion, only because all of us in this room, this virtual room, agree with each other, right? We agree that women representation in these sectors is important. What's sometimes more difficult is taking this conversation outside of our echo chamber, outside of our bubble, and taking the conversation outside of ourselves. Um, and that's where most of the work in Pakistan and all over the world is taking place. And that's where I'm going to share some of the examples of the work that we've been doing. So just to backtrack, all numbers and all of our anecdotes have established that women are underrepresented in the energy sector. Globally, just to reiterate, women represent 32% of the full-time employees in renewable energy, which is much higher than 22% in the traditional oil and gas industry. So keeping that in mind, this is good for us to know that most of the work where we need to do is also in this clean energy transition towards greener jobs and also clean workspaces. Um, so keeping that in mind, and also keeping in mind that women's representation in the power sector in Pakistan is only 4.6% in technical positions. And it's so important to differentiate technical positions from all other positions, because companies may count head of HR or head of admin or other sort of general jobs as, oh, we have women in this company. But we don't, we want to differentiate when we're gathering the data that we want more women in technical positions on the decision-making table and as heads of organizations. So coming back to male allies and male champions, the mode through which Women in Energy was established initially in 2018 was when I took the cause, a few of us colleagues took the cause to the Secretary Energy in Government of Punjab. And he was the one who gave us the government backing to have this network as an established sort of institutional structure to it. So he's our first male ally who took this cause and made it bigger than us few colleagues working in the sector. The second male ally that we have in the sector, and I'm sharing this is because he's director and CEO of a private company, a solar company based out of Lahore. They, when we first spoke to them, had 0 female employees, so no engineers and no female employee in technical positions. What they decided to do was sponsor one of our programs, which was a solar training given specifically to female engineers. And it was a 4-day hands-on training, starting from classroom basics of what does solar PV mean, and moving on towards what does installing solar PV look like, and just hands-on practical experience. This was so important because most of the time, even if women do end up getting a job in a solar company, they wouldn't be allowed to have more of a technical role. And so these side events outside of your full-time job or as a student, this strengthens your CV. So back to the director and CEO of this company, he then hired one of the trainees as his first sort of engineer, female engineer in the company. And now what we're doing with them is we're working on the first gender policy that the company can employ. And the idea is to make this policy a blueprint for other companies, especially solar companies or smaller sort of renewable energy companies that are cropping up in Pakistan in the last 5-10 years, for them to adopt a similar policy within their own companies. So just in terms of male allies, it's so important to take these conversations out to the male champions and have them actually work on real concrete policy changes within these organizations.
Thank you, Namira. Very, very valid points. And thank you for giving us examples, because a lot of men that we meet are not necessarily opposed to the idea of having female colleagues. It's just that because they are at a certain position of, I would call it privilege, is that they've never really thought about it from the other's perspective. And once we go and talk to them, they can be very helpful in leading the way. And I believe that such male champions should be present in almost every company that we talk about. Fawzia, coming back to you, Namira mentioned some really good points about the solar PV training and technicians. I know that some other companies within the WePower collaboration of strategic partners that we have been training, meter readers, solar technicians, etc. As an energy professional who's worked across the globe, do you think Pakistan is ready to have women meter readers? Do you think it's safe or viable? Or what are some of the other jobs that women in tech, so technical jobs that women can take up in the energy sector?
Thank you. First of all, I'm very, very much impressed with the work that Faiza and Namira are doing, and Adil, of course. It's very, for me, it's uplifting to know that you people are on the ground and you're actually working towards bringing more women into the STEM field. Are we ready? Are we ready to have women meter readers and being in the field? I believe we are. If we can have social workers going into the field, going into rural areas, I don't see why we cannot have, women who are reading meters or, working on utilities or transmission lines or anything of that sort. So yes, we are 100% ready. It's only, again, I have to bring my point back that we need to put in safe environments for them.
Yeah.
We need to have proper regulations and policies put in place. Let me tell you, as the bank, we, in all our projects that we design, we ensure that there is female participation in the workforce, and we provide training, and so it's actually a component in the design of our projects. And it's not only of the energy projects that we do; it's all over the board. Any projects that we do, we need participation of females in it. And Uzma, being the specialist who's sitting here in the panel, makes sure that any of our projects that go to the board have this component in it, where we look at gender, we look at their participation, we try to create jobs, and we do it in a very safe manner. Let me share with you. I have worked in FCV countries, which are the fragile conflict and violent countries. I have worked in Afghanistan as soon as it was opened. I worked in Iraq. I worked in Yemen. And the only reason I was able to work in these countries is because my management took my safety as the top thing to do. They encouraged me to work there. They believed in me, but they also provided me security. I had colleagues who surrounded me. I mean, I remember sitting in Basra in Iraq in a meeting, and it was a huge conference room with like 35 men sitting over there, and me the only female. And in those days, it was like wearing burqas and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, I was dressed in a very nice way so that no one would object to it. But I had to make a point over there by, telling them how capable I was, first, of doing the job, and two, my colleagues surrounded me. They provided me the assurance that you go ahead and speak, and we are here to protect you. Not only protect you, but to support you, right? So everything I said, they would reiterate it, saying, Fawzia said this. So it's a whole community that needs to get together to encourage these women and, to basically give them the confidence that they are going to be able to work in the field. Are we ready? We are ready. Do we have everything in place? No, we don't. And I was just sharing some examples. The World Bank, how it encourages women participation, and how they actually give you all the right tools to work in these countries. What kind of jobs can these women do? When I started working in the bank 23 years ago, though I was like working in the energy sector, I had to cover everything: oil, gas, pipelines, transmission line, thermal, everything. But now you have studies, your education, where you can segregate these things. You can be a solar expert. You can be a wind expert, right? There's renewable energies, there's hydro specialists, all that. So these are other things that women can do. You know, when you talk energy, we're not talking only utility. We're not talking only, you know, meter reading, as you were saying. We're talking experts in various energy fields. And now there's education is out there for you to be experts in this. Again, it is starting from the beginning, the change in language in schools, where it is encouraged that, you know, energy or STEM is not only for men. So it's a language change, it's an awareness change. It's as one of the panelists was saying, we need role models, right? Faiza's there, Namira's there, you are there. We need more role models and they have to be brought into the front, you know. As Faiza was saying, there's many people, many women, but they're not visible. They need to be visible in Pakistan. They need to be put out there and say, hey, these women are doing this kind of thing. That will encourage other women to take that path. I remember a long time ago, a few years ago, there was the first female Air Force pilot in Pakistan, right? And everywhere, everyone found out about it. And I know for a fact, females from my family who live in Pakistan want to be be in the Air Force. They want to be pilots. So this is the kind of thing you need to put out there. Tell people, we are out here. We are, be the role model for them. Go to schools, go to universities, inform them of what kind of work is being done, and encourage them. And there are tested interventions that when you have developed countries, when you put role models out there and they're available, girls get more interested in these kind of fields. So there is a whole world out there in STEM. There's a whole world out there in energy for women. And to tell you the truth, we need the women workforce in Pakistan to boost our economy, to bring in more finances into families where right now we only have one person and 5 people living off of that salary. When you get the women in the workforce and in these kind of fields where they are paid well, we will see a huge jump in our economy.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Fawzia. I always say that women empowerment and women inclusion is not a women-only issue. It's everyone's problem. We cannot get the country to move forward if, half of your population is sitting at home doing nothing. Very valid point. You were also talking about how Pakistan is ready for women in on the field as well. I just wanted to chime in very quickly about my own personal experience. I was on a site assignment in Karo for one of the wind turbine projects. I was the only woman in a 40-kilometer radius. And because my company had taken my safety, accommodated me, and because there was a senior engineer who would always refer to, okay, go ask engineer Sahiba what it is. So all the labor there would really respect me. Never once did I feel like I wasn't in a place whereas rather my engineering confidence was boosted like tenfold because I was the only one and I was being listened to, I was being heard, and I was it sort of buttressed my confidence in my engineering abilities as well. Usma, I wanted to come back to you as a social development specialist who's worked extensively on women's economic empowerment and in enterprise development as well. According to you, what is the potential of technical social entrepreneurship in Pakistan for women? We've heard multiple times in the entrepreneurial circles that women are more into nurturing and all of that. So, but we've also noticed that social entrepreneurship has been taken up by women over decades. How can we make it merge with technical social entrepreneurship? And what are some of the economic development initiatives that may help Pakistani women entrepreneurs to grow?
Thanks, Ramla. You talked about entrepreneurship, and we all know we only have 1% women entrepreneurs in Pakistan. So we do have a huge untapped potential almost in every sector, not just in social, technical, but in every sector. And for women entrepreneurs to grow in number in Pakistan and also in terms of their capacity, we again have to talk about some fundamental gaps, such as women's access to financial and productive resources. They have to be addressed. I mean, if I just give you an example, only 2% women in Pakistan, they borrow from formal institutions because of lack of information about such facilities and also lack of access to assets. That is generally a prerequisite for obtaining loans in Pakistan. Similarly, in one of World Bank studies, women entrepreneurs, they also cited family and domestic responsibilities as one of the main obstacles for not being able to retain or expand their businesses. So we have to have or acknowledge such efforts where we do recognize unpaid work that is overwhelmingly done by women, be they entrepreneurs, be they workers, or be they just, staying at home, taking care of children. So the amount of work they pay, and it's in fact, also calculated, women are 10 times doing that sort of work compared to men in Pakistan. So at the societal level, we need its recognition. And also not just recognition, we also want to see efforts by various sectors in terms of its redistribution among men and women, if we want women entrepreneurs to succeed. And also its reduction, for example, through measures such as state-sponsored daycare centers facilities and some other similar initiatives by the private sector. This can improve the situation. And this is not unheard of in Pakistan. Punjab, I keep saying in different forums, Punjab has certain examples of dedicated daycare facilities and funds that they have made available for both the private sector and the public sector. So these gaps must be taken into account. So going back to your second part about, what sort of economic initiatives are available for women entrepreneurs in Pakistan, I'll start with the World Bank's initiatives. So one of our higher education project, it is planning to support women entrepreneurs through innovative seed funds throughout the country. We have several projects and operations that are operating in KP province and Karachi city that are going to support women businesses, including, you talked about social entrepreneurship. So we also have other sectors like tourism, digital sectors to overall rectify this gap of having such low number of women entrepreneurs in Pakistan. We also have another dedicated program on women entrepreneurship finance initiative, which is part of our global initiative to address some market level constraints. And there are several other actors, both national and international and donor driven initiatives such as, Karandas Women Ventures, which is a program to support women-led businesses in Pakistan by providing them with growth capital and business development support services. So I think overall, it would be extremely important to have a dedicated platform where we get to know about such initiatives on a regular basis. Initiatives that are funded by government, by non-government actors, by bilateral donors. Because like I said earlier also, women entrepreneurs, one of their main concerns is that they don't have information and they don't have access to such networks and possible opportunities that are there in the market for them. So enabling them to access these forums would be very, very important. Another thing that I would like to highlight here is that World Bank last year, together with public and private sector, we organized a campaign which was called Girls Learn, Women Earn. And its purpose was to highlight and acknowledge policy actions and programs that different organizations are undertaking to ensure more women are entering the workforce, more women are running their businesses, and more girls are staying in school for, of course, for better education and health outcomes, and also for developing their future economic prospects. So during that process, more than 100 organizations, they partnered and joined hands with us, and they made organizational and program level commitments also to further this cause. So that still remains to be seen how those commitments were translated into action, but the intent was there and the overall process went smoothly. So we need initiatives like these to spread awareness on these critical issues. And so I'll stop here, and I agree with you, Ramla. There are several technical entrepreneurship initiatives also. We have several examples of, very young women entrepreneurs, like running initiatives independently, like in health, in education, in several initiatives that are considered taboo in Pakistan, but they are being taken up by women entrepreneurs and being run very successfully. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Isma. That was very, very informative. I actually was sitting through a training through Women Ventures just a couple of days ago, and some of the work that they've been doing is actually very phenomenal. So thank you for bringing them to everyone's attention, because I believe women can really grow from interventions of this sort. Adil, coming back to the confidence gap that we were previously talking about, so there's extensive research being done that signifies that there's absolutely no innate cognitive biological differences between men and women. So especially when it comes to math, we know, we have examples like people like Maryam Mirzakhani, who won the Fields Prize in math, which is equivalent to a Nobel Prize. So it routinely we see these role models, and routinely we take them as, token women, but and we routinely say that women aren't biologically made for math and physics, which is, I mean, we all are sitting here and we're fine. We turned out fine. But I, personally speaking, I did have this lack of confidence. Even while sitting in classrooms, I had this lack of confidence. I had trouble asking questions, and lack of confidence in my own analytical / mathematical abilities did make me miss out on a lot of opportunities. Do you believe that there's a gender dimension to this confidence gap, especially in the engineering graduates that you and your company interview? Do you find that there is a lack of confidence in the female applicants? And in your opinion, what are some of the ways that universities can help graduating students to be industry ready? So not just within, technical skills. You know that, for example, you and I both went to NUST, and we are pretty good in technical skills, but again, we are not so good in presentation skills. So can universities help build this leadership potential before they put out graduates for the industry?
Thank you, Ramla. True that naturally the mental processes and the comprehension abilities of both genders are the same in terms of maths and analytics by birth. But then there is a difference in performance and even contribution in the engineering fields between the both genders. Why? As you talked about the confidence, yes, there is a confidence gap in actually, and it is obvious and gender specific as well. So this confidence gap is ingrained in our society actually. Like Ms. Fauziya earlier mentioned, that bias comes from home. Just like home economics, we all know are women centric, and construction is male centric. These are two examples to quote here. But then one must also not forget a very important point, that confidence comes with the experience and exposure. I would like to quote my own example. Let's not move somewhere else. Stay here. When I jumped into professional life back in 2012, I was just required to stand beside the construction and just check minor works, which I know that everyone else at my workplace knew better than I did. So, but over the years, after the experience, after the exposure, that young guy is managing many projects and is very confident that he can manage any untoward situation at a construction site. So, quoting this example, yes, level of fears were different in my case. They were maybe a financial loss due to my negligence or a technical blunder, but in females' context, they are different. Like Ms. Fodia earlier mentioned about security in Afghanistan. But then I believe one gets maturer and more confident with the scenes they take in their lives. Bigger the responsibilities, bigger the confidence level is. And moving on to the second part, you said about what universities should be doing. I think universities should be overhauling the student life cycle of the females, where they must be adding some student grooming and mentorship programs. Also, to mention some mention here about some sensitivity trainings. There must also be intervention and inclusion of programs for career management, networking, interviewing skills for female students. Also, glad to hear Miss Fodia a couple of times. You also mentioned about some role model sessions. There's some females like we the panel we have today. They are really inspiring stories for female students. And above all, also both genders should also be encouraged to at university level. They should be encouraged to increase the level of engagement with each other. Unlike we had back in 2008, as I mentioned earlier, that there was minimum of interaction, and this should be done with each other to ease the interaction, especially while making student groups. There must be equal or substantial ratio of both genders, and even female students can should be made group leaders as well. And on the other side, if I say, there should be zero tolerance for harassment and other stereotypes or jokes, like they say, hey, you are driving like a female, and all such stereotypes which are attributed to women should be strongly discouraged in universities, so that we may also train our boys for acceptance of women at workspaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. Very, very valid points here. And I will come back to these as we move forward. But I want you to really quickly hear Faiza's opinion about equal pay. Because while everything that Adil mentioned has to be done, we also need to talk about not paying women like less than an equally qualified male candidate as well.
Right. So I think in the start of the panel, Uzma mentioned about the wage gap in Pakistan, which is a little over 30%. And in tech sector, we don't have that data specifically to tech, segregated by gender. But we also know that um, women hold all the below 1% of the jobs, 90% of the below 1% paid jobs in Pakistan. So most of the women we have work in the informal sector. The reason that I am really not happy about it, and Shamim and I kept on pushing a lot of girls into coding and make sure that we started a program because of that. The reason that we did that, because we know that computer science has a lot of potential of earning. So when a fresh grad or entry level engineers goes into a tech company, they usually earn somewhere from 35,000 to 70,000 rupees a month. But usually when you see women empowerment program, they are either pushing women to learn how to stitch, learn how to cook, learn how to do um, makeup or stuff like that. So they are teaching women all the jobs that are part of the informal sector with a very low rate of growth. But the kind of growth tech offers, the kind of earning ability tech offers, nothing offers that. Also, the environment for women in tech is comparatively better than other fields. So but still in tech, you will also see a lot of wage gap, not usually at the entry level jobs, but in the senior level jobs, where you have a woman with 10-15 years of experience and another guy with 10 and 15 years of experience. you will hear interviewers saying very weird things in the interviews. I'm telling you a lot of anecdotal data about it because I run a community for women, and these things, women talk, and these things travel in the sense that people come to me and other community moderators and tell them about the incidents that happened. So recently, in a local software company, a smaller company, so big companies like Contour or Ten Pearls or Systems Limited, these companies have their proper pay scales. So no matter it's a boy or a girl, if someone is coming on an entry level job, they will get a certain salary. But in smaller companies, what they do is that a guy and a girl both interviewed for the same position. The girl was offered 10,000 less than the boy, even though she performed better in the test. And the reason that they gave is because you won't continue your career after getting married. Why would you need so much money? You will leave it after a year or two. So that's about it. In one of my recent interactions with one of the CEOs of a company, he asked me for a code for a consulting project, and when I responded to him, he said, uh, doesn't your husband work? Why do you need so much money? So these are the things that happen, and these are the things that kind of perpetrate this idea of paying women less because they think that because men are supposed to be the breadwinners, so women do not need these money, and they are just spending it on random things. Somehow, no matter what we are spending it on, it's our call. The reason is that if I am doing equal work, I'm supposed to get paid equally. And with Code Girls, we have seen that because we target a lot of low income family girls whose parents do not want to invest in their education, we have seen that the household income is usually somewhere near 25,000. But when the girl graduates from the program and goes on for an entry level internship or a job, she gets around 30,000-40,000 a month, and it changes the dynamics of the whole family. And that is something really encouraging to see, in the sense that how getting a woman to a workplace and making her able to earn for herself can change her life.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Faiza. Namira, we were talking about the confidence gap, and then we talked about the wage gap. How are programs and networks such as Women in Energy helping build through this, both of these gaps, both the confidence as well as the wage gap?
That's such a good question. And just sort of collecting some bits and pieces from what all the speakers before me have said, I think the importance of role models cannot be overstated because, and I think this is also similar to what Abir has mentioned in the comments section. She's a petroleum engineer from NAT, and she's asked, how do we basically normalize having more women out there? So there are a couple of ways to tackle this in my point of view. One is you need to have a very inclusive HR department of these companies. So either have an inclusive HR, or in addition to that, also have a male champion as a CEO or the director of the company. In addition to that, back to role models, the more we normalize seeing women in technical positions, the more we normalize seeing women as leaders and sort of directors of companies and organizations, the better and easier it gets to promote more from sort of bottom up. Some of the role models that we have from Women in Energy in Pakistan, and these constitute 1/3 membership of our professional network, women that are in leadership positions in the energy sector in Pakistan. Some of them are chairperson of SNGPL, which is a huge organization in Pakistan. We also managing director of Punjab Power Development Board. She's been a gold medalist and an engineer, and now leading this organization in Punjab for a lot of years. We also have a lot of CEOs of solar companies based out of Lahore, based out of Karachi, based out of Islamabad. So seeing them in meetings, seeing them in webinars, seeing them just making decisions and leading their companies really normalizes when you have to sit on the table. Similar to what a lot of you have shared in this webinar, when I first started my job 6 years ago in the Energy Department and Government of Punjab, I was the only female in that department of 50 males. just going to that female bathroom seemed weird because they had pigeons inside that bathroom. It was so unused for ages. And because I had a good boss who I've mentioned, Secretary Energy and additional Secretary Energy, we actually had a 50-50 male-female ratio in the top leadership position of the energy department, not the support staff, but in the top leadership position. But when we left, so I left and he left and looking back, it was not a structural change. It was a change for a meantime when you have a good boss at the head. So, we have these sort of good moments and bad moments. There is so much structural change that needs to take place, which leads me to some of the, again, policy and sort of the real work that you need to do to change the system. And you can see my eagerness because that's where I specialize in policy change. So one of the projects or activities that we've been so proud of is working with the Punjab Commission on the Status of Women, along with Government of Punjab. So basically, the work was that by law, companies or organizations were mandated to have 30% representation of women on your boards. So boards of companies or trusts or authorities, and that's the easy work, like check mark. We did some really good work. We we changed the law. That's amazing. But then the implementation of that law is where, how do you get women on those boards to fill that quota? So the Women in Leadership project of PCSW was amazing in that they were doing this matchmaking. So we partnered up with them to do this matchmaking of women to be placed on boards of companies, especially in the energy sector. And we've been very lucky to have Miss Ermina Malik from Islamabad on board of Qaid-e-Azam Thermal Power Company. And it's stuff like this where you can actually sort of match the this sort of the bigger change that you want to bring in the energy sector. So I'll end there for now.
Thank you so much, Namira, for a very extensive summary of what we're talking about and for chiming in the absolute need of role models and the absolute need of women in decision-making positions as well. Also, thank you for the much-needed segue into question answers. The next question is from Gunjan. Gunjan has brought into account a recent case study of K Electric, which was prepared by the South Asia Gender and Energy Facility and Harvard Business School, which showed that employees performed much better in a gender-diverse work environment. His question is, how can the We Power network help in scaling up the efforts to make energy sector technical jobs accessible and attractive to women professionals, especially in renewable energy and the digitized power system? I would request Fawzia to perhaps take the lead in answering this question.
Gunchan is asking this question, and he's the one leading it. How can We Power help in attracting it? Well, I think We Power can help in interfering or intervening in a very, in universities, looking at universities, intervening, and maybe even to a point where providing internships to women to be able to get the confidence and to be able to, so when they hit the workforce, they actually have the experience and the confidence to hit the field running, basically. As Adil was saying, and there was a question here that, they don't have the confidence. So if they're already inbred into the system by having internships, they could probably end up having this confidence. What We Power can do, I think maybe if they engage with universities, look into scholarships, look into, organizing events, attracting, bringing in women like Namira was saying that are role models, bringing them in and having more of these webinars, or having, when allowed, when COVID is over, and we can actually go into the field in Pakistan and attract, bring these women forefront and attract more people. So basically, look into scholarships, look into sponsoring more of these kind of workshops, providing, internships, partnering with other firms and providing internships, matching, like Namira was saying, matching positions with that. So WePower can actually get involved in these kind of things and bring forefront these women who are actually the future of our nation.
Can I
Thank you,
continue quickly
Fawzia.
also?
Thank you so much.
Ramla?
Absolutely. Please, Usma. Of course. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Fawzia has very comprehensively talked about the demand side, which is in fact the most difficult part to address. In addition to that, I would also say that WePower can play a very important role in having those conversations with private sector companies and with the overall sector on how to make those jobs more attractive, even if they are internship opportunities for those young women students to consider this idea. Because again, the conversations we have been having with women engineers and with other women engaged in STEM field, they always talk about lack of facilities. And we kept talking about in this session also about lack of bathrooms, about lack of other conducive environment, like harassment. So in addition to encouraging girls to apply, we should also be simultaneously encouraging companies to work on these gaps before they make those jobs and internship opportunities available for women graduates.
Thank you, Usma. Very valid point. It comes from both ends, both the companies end as well as the candidates in the university side. Fawzia mentioned about the pandemic. I would want to bring in Amira and Faiza the conversation now. We all know that there is a prevalent anxiety throughout the workforce right now based on lack of opportunities. Students missed out on the recruitment cycles this year. The three of us, with the help of WePower, have initiated this job fair, STEM Forward 2020. That is the intention of which is to help candidates liaison with industry and understand what are some of the job opportunities available. I would like both of you to perhaps introduce STEM Forward from your perspective and also talk about what would you want to be the ideal result that comes from the job fair. Namira, you could go first. Yeah.
So the reason that I think our communities thought of this job fair, it started a couple of years ago. Ramla and I had a conversation, but this year, especially over the summer months, a lot of our women in energy chairs received emails from Fulbright attorneys, these graduates who had graduated in May and June, returning back to Pakistan, and writing to us, what do we do? Can you introduce us to energy companies? And they just seemed very, very in need of a career counseling or a conversation. And not just returning from abroad, but also you have so many local graduates. You have LUMS, IBA, NED, NUST, all of these universities, are producing masters and PhD level students. What do you do? And with COVID, I myself, I had a bit of uncertainty when I moved from Pakistan to UK. What do you do in that meantime? So it's such an uncertain time with this pandemic, everything going online. How do you network, especially for women? How do you network? I mean, men, have these boys clubs, you have this, smoking happening outside of the buildings. There's so many amazing informal ways to network. But with women, we have so many sort of social barriers as well. Or, what would that look like? What would that seem like? I don't want to seem too off. So this sort of idea of a job fair just fits in perfectly, that Women Engineers Pakistan, Women in Tech PK, and also Women in Energy, along with WePower, are collaborating on that. For us, also seems to answer a lot of these students and young professionals that were reaching out to us. Faiza, if you have something to add.
Yeah, definitely. I think even though we are in this horrific times, tech has been blooming for some weird reason in terms of opportunities. So we are seeing even locally that right now we have thousands of open positions. here in Pakistan in the tech sector. And every time I'm talking to someone who's running a company, they tell me that they are unable to reach out to the right audience, even though they post it on social media, post it on Rosie, they post it on a lot of other platforms, but finding the right talent becomes really tricky when it comes to tech. So I think an initiative like this, where we are kind of gathering all the people who are looking for better opportunities, as well as trying to gather all the companies that are looking for hiring better talent, that can really help. And especially in tech, because of COVID, people have gotten comfortable with this idea of remote working. So women are also very excited about getting remote jobs. This is something that we are seeing in Women in Tech Peak and Code Girls a lot, because companies are getting comfortable with flexi timings and remote opportunities. So yeah, really excited to see the results, and I would really like to see how many people we were able to place by the end of this effort. Yeah.
Thank you, Faiza. Before I move on to the next panelist, I would want to ask, Noor Rahman has asked a very important question, that we have these initiatives that develop networks and platforms for women in STEM that did not exist before. She's asking, what are the challenges you faced in building these platforms? So how did you find support and partnering with other organizations? And what were some of the barriers that you faced? Faiza, perhaps you could take a lead on that, and then we will ask Namira the same question.
Sure. So honestly, wasn't very difficult, because I think there wasn't anyone around at that time. And then we found excellent partners. So one of the consistent partner is Women Engineers. Then we have Pakistani Women in Computing, then Connected Women, then Women in Energy, then a lot of other women-focused platforms. And I think all of them have been very open in terms of collaborating and working together. Um, so it does not come from collaboration, but the challenges stay when you talk about changing mindsets of the people who are part of the community. So you will see a lot of internal backlash coming on a lot of different things. So people will question, why a women only community, or why working only for women. People will also question your motivation behind running something like that. So there could be like a lot of barriers and challenges around changing the mindset and making people comfortable with this idea that people do volunteer, and they are a lot of times volunteering not because they are looking for some kind of validation, but they're doing it because they know that if someone hasn't done it for them, they wouldn't have been here. So in my case, I have had a lot of excellent bosses, a lot of excellent mentors, a lot of good people who were there for me, and I wanted to kind of repay that in the form of the community that I've built, or the boot camp that I've been running, because tech has changed my life as well as the people that I know around me, and I would like the same to happen for other people. So if you want to start an initiative, I think you will find a lot of support coming from other communities, the communities that I've mentioned, other communities as well. But again, you will have to on the people that you're working for, in the sense that making them comfortable with this idea that you're doing it because you want to, and there is no compulsion when it comes to volunteer work. There is no compulsion when it comes to doing things for other people, and at the same time, not everything has like a very a weird or questionable agenda behind it. So this is something that we have faced initially. Questions about being very exclusive, questions about why women only and stuff like that. So you need to be prepared with your answers and rationale. So I have mine, other people will have theirs, but yeah.
Namira, what about you?
Just to add more to what Faiza was saying, one other aspect of the job fair that we have are a pre-job fair sort of capacity building workshops, and the reason for that is there are a lot of questions about how do you make your LinkedIn profile. I think it was Faiza who mentioned that, like, a lot of questions come up about making a LinkedIn profile, what you put in there, or CV writing, what exactly needs to go in there. So if your university didn't have a very strong career services office, I think which happens in a lot of cases, then it's very difficult to have that perfect sort of CV or LinkedIn profile. And also, a lot of my DC-based friends would agree, networking, it's such a DC thing to do. But in Pakistan, I feel like networking isn't sort of taught or explained in a way that is positive and useful for yourself without you, being stuck in an awkward situation. So our job fair also has these very important three capacity building workshops that we are offering starting next week on the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And Ramla, if you want to add more about the workshops, I'll pass this on.
Absolutely. So these workshops are very much in line with the theme of the job fair. So we start with talking about what is the future of jobs. A lot of the skills that were very valid 5 years ago are no longer needed in the country. And there is this resistance towards pivoting. So if there is somebody who studied civil engineering, they do not want to learn database management. They just want to stick to civil engineering. Whereas everything now is becoming tech oriented. Like Faiza said, there's so many jobs in tech because everything is now health tech, ed tech, fintech. So you need to have these abilities and these skills present. You may have whatever major you graduated with. Now is the time to evolve and come to par with the changing world. And since Pakistan is a very, very young country, our median age is 25 to 35 years old. Now is our chance to take up and learn these new skills and fall into pace with the rest of the world. The second workshop is about communication skills. It's in business and communication skills for the workplace. We spoke of, Adil mentioned interview skills. Namira, you mentioned about how career services officers need to step into that. So a lot of times when we have been helping companies recruit female talent for the past 7 years, people send in some of the most ridiculous cover letters. They don't know because they were never taught that way. They don't know how to pitch themselves. They don't know how to capitalize on their skills. And this is a conversation that must be had right now. And the third and final workshop is on CV building. I cannot implore more on the importance of how much a piece of paper represents you when you are applying for a job. You absolutely cannot take this lightly. You cannot have spelling mistakes. You cannot have typos. You cannot miss out on some of the more important volunteer work you've done. You need to show yourself as a three-dimensional, well-rounded candidate. And that is a outcome of these three workshops that we want to put in. Right before the job fair, we want to ready our talent base to be more employable. You may have the best skills in the world, but you need to be able to communicate with the client, with your boss. You need to be able to present yourself. That basically for me is the outcome of the entire job fair. People who are ready for the workplace and employers that are ready to hire well-rounded people and be able to mentor them and sponsor them and hopefully, inshallah, get some placements as well. If not, at least liaison between candidates and companies. We have one final.
Can I
Yes,
add
Adil.
something here,
Of
Ramla?
course. Please do. Yes, please.
Yeah, it's good to hear that you are arranging different sessions for CV building, for improvement of communication skills. One thing that I would really want an element to be added in these trainings about personal and professional development. I mean, not only it's not only it's important to get a job, but mid-career switches. Since we have some audience from mid-career level as well, so an element or guideline about professional development is also necessary. That's what I wanted to add. So
Ramla, one thing I'd like to add too is
Yes, Fazia, of course.
recently, I am so happy to hear about this job fair because recently I was working with an entity and we were going to hire 4 engineers, and I was adamant that 2 of them had to be female. And believe you me, we tried every which way, LinkedIn, everywhere. We tried to attract these women. We did some cold calling to attract women to come and apply for the positions. And you're right. I mean, the only thing was their CVs weren't that great, their experience wasn't that great compared to the men that had applied. and it came to a point where I ended up hiring only one woman out of the entire, and that too was not as an engineer, but was as a communications expert, because I just couldn't get the right person. I mean, we had to get the job done as well, right? So I'm just so happy to see that you're having this job fair. You're working with these women to improve their CVs and maybe their interview skills, how to present themselves, how to be able to tell what technical abilities they have. It is fantastic. And I'm just, I wish it had happened a few months ago so I could have hired these people. But there's going to be more opportunities. And I've encouraged Actors, this entity, to go to this fair and work with you guys and see, attract as many as possible as we can, females for the field. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fazia. We are collecting a CV pool as well. So hopefully later when you see any job opportunities, please, please, please get in touch with us. We have this box of qualified candidates just waiting to get in touch with employers. Thank you so much to all our panelists. We do have a few comments in the chat window of people appreciating everybody's guidance and everybody's comments on what is needed in Pakistan, specifically within the STEM and energy workforce. I would like to, on a lighter round, ask all panelists to maybe in one sentence tell us about some of the most ridiculous excuses you've heard when you're pushing for more diverse workplaces.
Women ask for maternity leaves.
Okay. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and get married and then leave the workforce.
How about you, Uzma? What are some of the most ridiculous excuses you've heard?
One of the counterparts, he said to me, so you want to take away jobs from men? You want to make them unemployed?
Oh, God.
Yeah, I have to agree with Usma. I had the same thing. What do we do at the men then? If we're going to give the women the opportunity, what do we do at the men?
Yeah.
They say women cannot do anything, or is there anything? Is there any matter in the world women have ever resolved? They say this.
Oh, God. One for me would be I was supposed to give a training in something I have a PhD in, and the boss of a colleague told them that, and there's no way to say this in English, but he said, "Baji kya batayengi? वो हमें किताब से उठा के टेबल में से डाल देंगे." And which translates into, what is this sister going to tell us? And I literally have a PhD in that. So these things can be very daunting, but I mean, now we can laugh at them and try to take this instead. Adil, I would like to start the last question with you, and perhaps all the panelists can join in. Perhaps name a female role model in STEM field or energy fields that has inspired you in your experience.
Well, I am inspired by one of my cousins. Her name is Fatma, and I've also named my newborn baby girl Fatma because I was really inspired by her. She was just 18 when her father, in Urdu you call it Mamu, my Mamu passed away, and he has a big business to handle. They prepare spare parts for Honda Atlas, and he had a factory worth, I mean, the revenue of that factory worth millions in a year. So she was the only girl, only daughter, or she has no siblings. So alongside, she was managing her education. She was also looking after her father's business, and Alhamdulillah, she has been managing it so well since years. Yes, in the beginning, she went very, she remained nervous at times, and she started crying while sitting with us, saying, Adil bhai, this has been done, this partner, they have been trying to ridicule me. They are not sharing the exact reports with me, but then she she held her nerves, and now, alhamdulillah, she's doing best in this field.
Amazing. Awesome. What about you, Faiza?
Um, I think I would say Shamim Rajani. I've been working with her for the past 3 years, and even though she doesn't have a college degree, she has managed to kind of make a lot of men question their own technical abilities, and I think that's really really inspiring. Yeah.
So to the benefit of all the audience, Shamim Rajani is the Vice Chairperson of Pakistan Association of Software Houses, and she's also a collaborative member for the job fair that we are arranging. What about you, Fazia? Perhaps a female role model who's inspired you?
To tell you the truth, I have 3 female role models sitting right across me in this seminar right now. Namira, Faiz, and yourself. I mean, it's amazing work that you are doing. So I'm changing my role models now.
Thank you.
I do have to say that there was one lady who really impressed me. And this was a lady who was working across with me on a solar project in Pakistan. And her name is Faryal, if I can say it correctly. She is an entrepreneur, and she is the one who set up Goats for Water.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, her thinking and her way of confronting the issues and how she's come, like she's become she had the opportunity to do so many things, right? Move on. She was working with me. She could have left what she was doing and started working on the World Bank and all that, but no, she stuck to her guns. She actually left the World Bank job. She went in and she started working on this and paying attention to it. So for me, she is like way up there. If I had the opportunity to do something like that, I would do it. I would have if I had the opportunity to do what you are guys doing right now, I would do that too.
Awesome. Just very quickly, Namira, Uzma, your role models.
This is very quick. So our family friend, her name was Namira Salim. My chachu was clearly inspired by, recommended the name, and that's who I'm named after. She's the first Pakistani astronaut. So I'll put that there.
How about you, Uzma?
Yes. Fazia stole my words. I just wanted to say, women like you, Ramla, Namira, Faiza, Fazia, because you all are working so passionately and so tirelessly in this, such a difficult field, and it gives me a lot of hope. It makes me very happy, and it also makes me believe that change will come very soon.
Uzma, I could not do my work if I didn't have you there too. I mean, none of my projects would go through if I didn't have you to guide me on this.
Thank you so much to all our panelists. We learned a lot. We talked about, in a brief nutshell, we talked about some of the current gaps that we have, both within the applicants as well as the employers. We have gaps in liaison between finding the correct skilled people and matching them with the correct job opportunities. We also talked about how the pandemic has shifted acceptance towards remote work and flexi hours, and now is the time that more women can jump in to some of the opportunities that are remote and perhaps much safer. We also talked about how companies, specifically in the harder on-ground engineering domains like construction and plants, can help facilitate presence of women in these areas. And like Fazia mentioned earlier on, Pakistan is ready because when we have female health workers going door to door for vaccines and things of that sort, we can definitely have women in the fields as well. We just need to stop making excuses about these things and get to work. With that, I would like to thank everyone who attended. I would also like to take this time to quickly divert you towards our job fair. You can register today if you log on to www.stemforward2020.com. That's stemforward2020.com. It's completely free of cost to attend. We have some of the biggest names in the country, as well as a few companies that work abroad but are looking for remote opportunities, who will be exhibiting with us. We do not guarantee that you will get a job there, but we guarantee that you will be able to network with employers across the country and gain some momentum within your career. With that, thank you so much to all the panelists. It was very, very inspiring to hear from you and hear about your experiences. And we look forward to having your support in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ramla, and all the panelists.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Everyone, bye-bye.